Hello, Parker. How are you? Parker R. Kerr 21. I'm writing with a Parker 21. Okay, Parker, what's up with you? I'm okay. I'm trying to get some of my neighbors in my building to do some live streaming with me, and not having a great deal of luck. But hopefully they will start participating. I'm trying to find that's the one I'm looking for right there. No, this is not what I'm looking for. I just put a dip nib in a pen, and I can't find that pen. I can find that pen. It's right here. It's right here. A boingy boingy pen. How are your nodules today? Your nodes? Boingy. Awful. And the surgery is delayed because of COVID. Is that what's keeping things from happening sooner? Well, while you're waiting, they should give you the vaccine. Unless that's would make it worse for you to have that. Seems to me people that require being up close and personal with someone should be first in line. Not someone like me who can live happily ever after all by myself. Oh, you've had the vaccine? Okay. Both of them?
Hello, I'm Andrea Freeman, professor of law at the University of Hawaii William S. Richardson School of Law, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to deliver this lecture today over Zoom and look forward to answering your questions. As a Fulbright scholar at King's College London, I'll be looking at how food oppression operates in the United Kingdom. This lecture focuses on the United States.
Russell just sent me a link to
because of how the U.S. has exported non-nutritious foods around the world to support its agricultural industries. So I'm going to start by showing you some slides of the latest incarnation of the alt-right obsession with milk. These are protesters at a New York anti-Trump art installation called He Will Not Divide Us. Neo-Nazis danced shirtless, chugging jugs of milk, saying that their action demonstrated their opposition to the vegan agenda. Milk also entered the Twitterverse, replacing Pepe the Frog as the emoji symbolizing white superiority in the Twitter names of newsworthy white supremacists. So this is Richard Spencer, president
We're doomed.
of the
Hello, Melissa.
think tank, National Policy Institute. And this is Tim Treadstone, an alt-right social media personality called Baked Alaska, with glasses of milk in their Twitter names. Here's some poetry and a map tracking lactose intolerance that was much discussed on the alt-right websites. For movie fans, there's a terrifying scene in the Best Picture nominated Get Out of a white supremacist slowly sipping on a glass of milk. Now, this association between white supremacy and milk is not new. In fact, it's been around for about 100 years. In the 1920s, a National Dairy Council pamphlet explained the people who have used liberal amounts of milk and its products, meaning white people, are progressive in science and every activity of the human intellect. And in 1933, History of Agriculture of the state of New York declared,
we're doomed.
A casual look at the races of people shows that those using much milk are the strongest physically and mentally, the most enduring of the people of the world. The Aryans have been the heaviest drinkers of milk and the greatest users of butter and cheese, a fact that may in part account for the quick and high development of this division of human beings. So a few years ago, in my article, The Unbearable Whiteness of Milk, the United States Department of Agriculture, or the USDA, policy around milk also harms people of color. Despite overwhelming medical evidence that milk consumption is linked to serious illnesses and some not so serious conditions like lactose intolerance, the USDA continues to encourage people to drink milk through the federal dietary guidelines and to dispose of surplus milk that the Farm Bill mandates it to purchase by giving it to communities of color, either directly or indirectly through nutrition programs where people of color are disproportionately represented. This includes the Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women and Children, or WIC, and school lunches. They created a marketing branch from a dairy farmer checkoff program called Dairy Management, Inc., that designed award-winning, race-targeted advertising and partnered with fast food companies to create products with more cheese. These products include a Domino's 7-cheese pizza. Although white people eat the most fast food, it makes up a disproportionate amount of the diet of people living in poor urban communities of color. And this is an example of food oppression. So food oppression is facially neutral, food-related law, policy, or government practice that creates health disparities along race, gender, and class lines.
Doomed.
Now, these disparities include high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, strokes, and obesity. And the food, agricultural, and pharmaceutical industry's influence over government policy contributes to these disparities. In the United States, poor diet has overtaken smoking as the primary cause of avoidable deaths. cultural myths about personal responsibility that ignore structural determinants of food choice, as well as racial stereotypes, make these disparities appear natural. Another example of food oppression is the overwhelming presence of fast food in public schools. So in exchange for much needed resources, the fast food companies engage in intensive marketing to public school students. So teachers give out coupons for fast food as a reward for good grades. They distribute materials like fire safety guides with fast food coupons inside. Students and classes that raise the most money during their parent-teacher drives earn fast food prizes. Fast food is also on school buses, it's on school scoreboards, school signs, and games. And it's the site of school fundraisers. And this pervasive marketing predicts the expectation that schools will look after the physical well-being of children. It also disproportionately affects students of color who attend public schools at higher rates than white students and participate more often in the USDA school lunch, breakfast, and milk program. They're disproportionately eligible for free lunches, and these students often live in neighborhoods called food swamps that are saturated by fast food outlets. Through its commodities program, the USDA uses its school meal programs to dispose of surpluses that result from the Farm Bill's subsidies of certain products, including milk, meat, soy, and corn. And when they enter school meals, these commodities take the form of corn dogs, chicken nuggets, tater tots, sausage links.
Tater tots.
And these processed foods contribute to high rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes, which Black children suffer from at greater rates than white children. And the US government provides further support for unhealthy eating at school by calling pizza a vegetable. And even though young people of color have the highest rates of food-related health problems, fast food companies have recently zeroed in on them for new marketing schemes. These young people are extremely attractive to fast food companies for a number of reasons. First, they tend to spend more money on fast food than their white peers. Second, they're considered trendsetters, definers of what is or will soon be considered cool. Third, they're particularly vulnerable to targeted marketing because they're in the unique position of developing their personal and racial identities at the same time, and very open to outside influences. Youth of color also overwhelmingly have cell phones, even if their families cannot afford a computer or tablet at home. Fast food companies track the location of these cell phones and deliver coupons to customers when they're within a few blocks of their outlet. In many urban neighborhoods of color, young people are always within a few blocks of a fast food place, and of course, always on their phones. When they get into a McDonald's, they're encouraged to become brand ambassadors and do their own free advertising for the company by sending up snaps on Snapchat with the McDonald's logo and its messages in the frame. Kids can also engage in this type of free advertising while they're texting. And for even younger kids, there are racially targeted McDonald's games and apps. Well, if the USDA wanted to counter the fast food industry's marketing tactics, they could do so, even without regulating. 8th graders who perceived healthy eating as an act of social justice made better food choices. These students acted in defiance against corporations that market to vulnerable children and engineer junk food to make it addictive, appealing to their values of autonomy and social consciousness was more effective than teaching them about long-term health consequences. But the USDA is unlikely to fund this kind of truth campaign because it would go directly against the agency's interests. Most of the fast food industry's contributions go to Republicans, and the reign of our fast food president just ended. Racial stereotypes disguise the impact of government action on health disparities. The media often portrays Latinx and Blacks as overweight, and lazy and weak-willed. And the myth of personal responsibility casts individuals as in complete control of their diet and health, when in reality, food choices are constrained by external structural circumstances. Now I'm going to talk about two nutrition programs that contribute to racial health disparities: the Food Distribution Program for Indian Reservations and the National School Lunch Program. Much of the problem with these two USDA programs is their role as a vehicle to distribute subsidized commodities to assist the USDA in disposing of surpluses created by the Farm Bill. Now, the first Farm Bill was enacted in the 1930s as part of the New Deal legislation responding to the Great Depression. It had the twin goals of supporting American agriculture and alleviating hunger. It accomplished these goals by subsidizing foods that were filling, leading to overproduction of certain foods like corn, wheat, and soy, while neglecting to support others, including fruits and vegetables. And although this strategy succeeded in reducing hunger, it contributed to the next food-related public health crises, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Subsidized commodity foods dominate the programs designed to get food to low-income students and Indigenous people: the National School Lunch Program and the Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations. So while the USDA would like us to think that school lunches look like this, they actually look like this. And the USDA promotes the FDPIR as this, but in fact, it's this. And the history of food assistance to tribes goes much further back than the New Deal. Colonization involved the deliberate destruction of traditional foodways. As part of the Indian assimilation project, President Washington vowed to ruin their crops on the ground and prevent them planting more. This policy led to mass starvation. Later, President Jackson ironically justified the 1830 Indian Removal Act that authorized the forced dislocation of tribes to the west by the fact that tribal lands could no longer support the indigenous way of life after the damage done by American theft and occupation. After the 1851 Indian Appropriations Act codified the creation of Indian reservations, the Office of Indian Affairs, which was housed under the War Department, took charge of distributing rations that the government distributed to prevent starvation resulting from the displacement of Indigenous people from their homes, land, and resources. The U.S. wielded these rations as a weapon, withholding them from families who resisted their children's removal to boarding schools or rejected Christianity. The 1862 Dakota War, sparked by the deliberate withholding of rations, ended in President Lincoln ordering the execution of 38 Dakota men, the largest mass execution in U.S. history. And sadly, the rations that the government did provide were made up of low quality and unfamiliar foods. The U.S. deliberately left traditional foods out of assistance packages to try to steer tribes toward a civilized lifestyle. Then, in 1949, the government began sending commodity surpluses to tribes, and the FDPIR became an official program in 1977 as an alternative to food stamps because of the obstacles to accessing these stamps posed by tribes' isolation. Today, Indigenous people have more type 2 diabetes than any other racial or ethnic group, and this form of diabetes often leads to paralysis, amputation, and blindness. The rate of deaths from diabetes is 177% higher than for any other group. And Indigenous adults are diagnosed with obesity 60% more often than Black adults. On the Dakota Reservation, life expectancy for males is between 40 and 50 years old, as opposed to 76 in the general population. Indigenous people have higher infection rates and 2 times the deaths from COVID than whites. And part of this is because of their higher rates of underlying high risk factors of obesity and diabetes. So commods, another name for the FDPIR boxes, contribute significantly to these disparities. Activist Charles Red Gates recounted testimony that he gave to government representatives about the boxes in 1991. Did you ever see what's in these cans? This guy said, no, show us. We want to see. So I grabbed a can of pork and I told him, you're going to get a bad smell. It doesn't smell good and it doesn't look good when I open it. So you take a look. I got a can of chicken, a can of beef, and a can of pork. The first one I opened, everybody crowded around. I opened it up, and as soon as I opened it up, a couple of them backed away and grabbed their noses and their mouths. When I began to dump it out, they both ran outside and threw up. That's what they were giving us. And I showed them all the connective tissue, the blood vessels. It was some pretty terrible stuff. Because the proteins and produce in the boxes are often undesirable or inedible, many recipients only eat the sugars and carbs. And the contents of the boxes are supposed to reflect the dietary guidelines created by the USDA and the Department of Health and Human Services. But Bernard and Brown describe these guidelines as, quote, amounting to, perhaps inadvertently, the nutritional equivalent of smallpox-infected blankets. Their gross inadequacy likely reflects the guidelines' allegiance to the food and agricultural industries. Karuk ceremonial leader Leif Hillman describes nutritional colonialism through FDPIR as, quote, a modern extension of tribal termination and genocide. The USDA defends the poor nutritional quality of these boxes by claiming that they're supplemental, but 1/3 of program participants rely on them for all their food. Commods and their effects are so pervasive that for some people, they become wrapped up in a pan-tribal Indian identity, bridging gaps between tribes, because only Indians can have a commod bod.
Well, I'm going to stop that just because I need to check my mail here. Oh, that's right. Oh, no, that's right. Oh, God. Oh, that's right. Try here. Write this down. It's raining out, and I need to go to the grocery store to buy some food that I'm going to eat today and over the weekend. And it's raining and kind of chilly, but I'll manage. I'm trying to think what I need to do here. I'd like to pick up everything that's on the floor and put it somewhere. It would be nice if I could figure out a way to do that. And what? Then I'm going to do what? I'm going to, I fixed my Schiavello Ranch. Parker, if you're still in the room, I bumped into my construction I made of the Lincoln logs, and part of it came apart, so I had to lash it down more so it's sturdier. And which is good. That's a good thing. And I am going to, Melissa, I'm kind of, all the time I was thinking you were Mighty Mouse. I don't know. My brain is just not functioning here, Melissa. It's Melissa. Melissa, not. I thought you were Mighty Mouse. You're Melissa. Anyway, so I'm going to start doing that. And I will see you all later. And we'll talk. We'll talk.